Her words didn't simply cut into the conversation. They felt like a blade. Your job is to pay, not talk. It wasn't a tease. It was a public decree delivered in front of a dozen relatives. People who knew us and already carried opinions. Her uncle had just raised a glass to family sacrifices and I, foolishly, had mentioned wanting to surprise her with a getaway. Just the two of us, our first in years. She didn't wait for the sentence to finish. No laugh, no playful ribbing. She stared at me as if I'd broken an unspoken rule, as if I'd forgotten my place. Her words landed like a weight and the room went quiet. That thick, suffocating silence that makes your neck flush. I felt eyes flick across the table. No one laughed. Not even Rachel, who finds humor at funerals. Her brother cleared his throat and looked anywhere but at me. Her aunt set down her fork slowly. Her uncle tried to patch the moment with a clumsy wine joke and failed. The atmosphere had shifted and everyone sensed it. Everyone except her, who reached for the breadbasket as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just gutted me in front of witnesses. I smiled because I'd learned how silence unsettles people. When you don't snap back, they don't know how to react. I paid the tab. Nobody offered to split it even though it was a group dinner. I opened the door as we left. She didn't thank me. In the car, she scrolled through her phone the whole ride, snorting at some meme a friend sent, not mentioning the remark at all. I didn't bring it up. That would be overreacting, her go-to insult for anything resembling self-respect. Back home, she complained of a headache and went straight to bed. I stayed in the dim kitchen with only the oven clock and my laptop for company. First, I checked our shared calendar. 2 weeks from now, she had a spa weekend with friends scheduled. Massages, facials, overpriced lunches with people clinking champagne and posting hashtag Queens deserve it all. Then I logged into the Lexus account. Username mine, password mine. Her car's balance $21,420 and a monthly payment set up to take out like clockwork, until now. My cursor hovered over the Manage Payments button, waiting for me to keep pretending. It wasn't about the money. I've paid for far worse. It was the narrative the money bought. Her curated independence, the lifestyle she paraded like a handbag, the image that made me the invisible background. I hit Disable Autopay. A polite pop-up warned about late fees and possible default. Good. I clicked Confirm and watched the status change. Payment halted. Then I rang the bank servicing line and explained I wanted future contact by mail only and that the registered driver should be the one to receive any delinquency notices. The agent asked if I understood the implications. I said I did. He hesitated and said something that stayed with me. Most people wait until it's too late. I simply hung up. I wasn't waiting. I was ahead of the curve. Upstairs, she slept with her phone pressed to her chest, probably mid-complaint about me being not spontaneous anymore. I stood over her and felt no heat of anger, just a cold clarity, because I knew what was coming and she didn't. The system's click when autopay turned off was underwhelming. No bells, no alarms, only a calm autopay disabled, and a polite invite to leave feedback. I almost laughed. This wasn't feedback, it was retribution. I refreshed the page to watch the change finalize. In a few days, the late notices would start. Standard procedure, standard escalation. I'd read the fine print long ago while she'd been busy choosing her white diamond pearl Lexus and posting it on Instagram with crown emojis and champagne glasses. 63 likes in 2 hours and not a glance at the contract. The lease bore only my name. The insurance, my details. Dealership emails landed in my inbox. To her, luxury required only access. She never cared about the paperwork. I opened notes and started a checklist. Lexus payment canceled. Insurance cancel after repossession. Remove her name from the joint card. Change passwords. Reassign account access. This was no scorched earth tantrum. It was surgical and deliberate. At 8:06 a.m., I called the lien holder. After the authentication ritual, last 4 digits, secret question, mother's maiden name, I reached Greg, chirpy and professional. I told him to halt payments and mail delinquency notices to the registered driver. He warned that could trigger a default and possible repossession and asked if I understood the damage to my credit. I said I did. There was a long pause and then, almost conspiratorially, he admitted repercussions would follow. That suited me. I found her spare key in the drawer, the sleek chrome one with remote start and a panic button she loved dangling from a designer fob, the one she flashed like a trophy at parties where she'd said she'd never date anyone who drove under 60K. I'd laughed when she joked. Now I saw it for what it was. A value statement I'd been financing with my life. I screenshot the dashboard showing autopay disabled and saved it in a hidden folder titled Independence. I drafted an unsent email to my accountant about financial separation options. Logistics, not melodrama. Let her sip mimosas and post about her nails. Let her narrate a life I funded. Soon the picture would have something conspicuously missing. The Instagram post landed like a provocation. Her at brunch, oversized shades, a mimosa, nails glinting, caption, when your man knows his role, face blowing a kiss emoji, with comments full of crown emojis and praise for her lifestyle. I opened the loan dashboard again. Still unpaid, status delinquent, grace period 4 days. The system was polite about it, as if clearing its throat before making a demand. She had no idea. She never asked. She assumed money was a magic trick. Appears, pays, disappears. She dressed consequence as mental health. When envelopes piled up unread on the counter, she'd say, "If it's important, they'll text me." The thick envelope from finance, official, with her name in the address window, arrived and she barely glanced at it, tossed it next to a half-empty green juice and went to yoga, complaining about an instructor who might have dislocated or something. Inside that ignored envelope was a default notice, bold red terms. If payment not received by Friday 11:59 p.m., repossession could proceed without further notice, and the vehicle could be seized at any time without additional warning to the driver. She left for brunch, kissing me on the cheek with lip gloss smudged on my skin and reminding me to send the rent. I wiped it off, picked up the finance letter, and read the repo agent's contact information, the case ID, the fax number, quaint but effective. I composed a short, precise fax, regarding case 741,209 registered to her full name. Please be advised the primary borrower has no intention of resolving this delinquency. You are authorized to proceed with asset recovery at your earliest convenience. I included the registered driver's usual parking address, the brunch spot tagged in her recent posts, and attached a signed statement confirming sole ownership of the vehicle loan. One click, one fax, and the machine spit out the confirmation page. Transmission successful. Analog steps for a social media era problem. She never expected me to play by the rules she never read. That night she talked about starting a vlog over dinner, laughed about living like a baddie, and asked my opinion while the envelope lay vanished into yesterday's mail pile. I sipped wine and said, "Maybe it's time people see the real you." She smiled, oblivious, while somewhere a tow office under fluorescent lights had her license and plate on a clipboard. At 12:42 p.m. my phone buzzed. An incoming call from her. I let it ring a few times and then answered to frantic breathing in a single line. "There are 2 men by my car." The panic broke her composure. The sharp, condescending voice was gone. In the background I heard papers shuffling and a calm male voice mentioned secured collateral. She demanded I call, to tell them it's a mistake. I listened, the birds outside and the steady kitchen hum filling the pause, and then I drank coffee and said nothing. Just let her panic be what it was. When she repeated that the bank said the car was being repossessed, I waited. She expected me to spring into action, to apologize, to smooth it over, to be the obedient provider who fixed everything. Instead I said, "It's not my call," and hung up. The silence that followed was a kind of symphony. I didn't gloat or dance. I simply let the consequence land. For once I hadn't swallowed the insult, rationalized her cruelty, or erased my own dignity to keep a polished image. I'd said no to being her prop, no to underwriting her illusions. I imagined her scrambling, calling the bank, the dealership, demanding answers, and realized she'd been banking on my predictability. She'd assumed I'd cover every crisis. She was wrong. It was that particular tone, the sharp, performative indignation she used whenever things didn't bend to her will, that told me exactly when the tide had turned. I could picture the scene already. Her pacing, snapping at friends, attempting to salvage her pride, but she wouldn't be climbing back into that car because it wasn't hers anymore. Somewhere across town, a man in steel-toed boots and dark shades would slide into the driver's seat, clipboard on the dash, engine thrumming. She could keep the key fob dangling from its designer charm as a souvenir of the story she used to tell. But the story itself was finished. For the first time, I wasn't going to clean up the mess. She'd relied on my silence as permission for years. This time my quiet was the sentence. The front door slammed so hard the pictures rattled. I didn't flinch. She came in like a storm that had forgotten how to land. Hair in disarray, eyes rimmed red, purse half open, phone gripped as if it were a weapon, and she didn't even take off her heels. They clicked across the hall until she stood breathing hard at the living room threshold and spat. "You did this!" I lifted my mug, sipped lukewarm coffee, put it down with careful precision and looked up. "Technically," I said, "the bank did." Her jaw twitched. "Don't you dare play coy with me right now," she hissed, stepping closer, furious and frantic. "You stopped paying. You let them take my car." I tipped my head. "No." I stopped being treated like a debit card with feet.
Her mouth flapped, searching for an insult that could force me to flinch, but the lines she found were weak.
"Petty," she said. "You embarrassed me in front of my friends." My smile was small, cold, surgical. "You embarrassed me in front of my family," I replied.
The color drained from her face, and with it the venom.
She stood there, chest heaving, trying to find a comeback that would make me apologize or retreat. None came. The rage folded into something else. Tears, heavy and slow, streaking mascara down her cheeks in perfect performative lines. She collapsed into the armchair opposite me as if someone had struck her. "They were laughing," she whispered. "I know," I said, steady and unforgiving. Kay was like, "Guess your man doesn't know his role after all." I leaned back. Sounds like Kay finally got something right. Her shaking turned almost childlike as she wiped at her face. "You don't get it. That car," she started. "You loved what that car said about you," I corrected. She flinched and the collapse was complete. Not loud, not theatrical, but hollow and absolute. She sat there emptied in a way I hadn't seen before, not because something inside her broke, but because she realized something inside me had. I wasn't screaming, pleading, or begging. That was the thing that scared her. I was done. She reached for her phone, probably to text her mother or a friend or a lawyer, but the battery was dead, her lifeline silenced. "You didn't warn me," she breathed. "You just let it happen." I nodded. "That's what you've been doing to me for years." She blinked, searching for an argument she no longer had. Eventually she rose and walked down the hall to the bedroom, closing the door softly as if afraid to wake something that couldn't be undone. I poured out the cold coffee, rinsed the mug, dried it, and returned it to the cabinet. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel obligated to fix what she'd broken. The next morning I made myself eggs. She slept late in sulk sleep and I didn't wake her or offer to make her tea. I cracked shells, salted the pan, watched the edges brown, and then logged into our bank portal. The joint account still existed, linked to her Sephora subscriptions, Amazon orders, delivery apps, and that wellness membership she never used but bragged about. I clicked Close Account. It asked me to transfer the remaining balance, most of it my money, to another account I'd opened the night before. I didn't hesitate. The shared account evaporated. She wouldn't discover it until her nail appointment later, when the card would decline and the hostess would offer a sympathetic smile. Next I canceled the extra credit card I'd given her years back as an act of trust that had become a way for her to spend like our marriage was a sponsorship. No ceremony, no notification fanfare, just a quiet severing. The kitchen felt unusually peaceful. No half-empty juice bottles, no scattered receipts, no tangled hair ties. She came downstairs around 11 in a robe, scrolling with that blank, caffeinated stare of someone whose curated world was beginning to tilt. "You didn't bring groceries?" she asked. "I didn't order any," I said, "but I sent a list last night." She mentioned I once joked her job was to pay. I said, "I've stepped down." She blinked. Minutes later the salon app pinged. Card declined. Instacart failed 3 minutes after. She wandered into my office a little later, confused, not yet outraged. "Did something happen to the bank card?" she asked. "No," I answered. "It's just not yours anymore. You can't just cut me off." "Why not?" I said. "You were crystal clear last week. You said my job was to pay." She tried to laugh it off. "Okay, you're making a point. Can you transfer?" "No," I said flat. "Final." Her mouth formed a puzzled O. "So this is punishment?" she asked. "It's recalibration," I corrected, standing. "You wanted a provider, not a partner. I'm aligning the services with the contract you declared in front of 12 people and a bottle of Pinot." She opened to retort, but her phone buzzed. Another failed payment notification for her yoga subscription. Her confidence flickered. "I have things to do," she muttered, the words thin. "Then find a way to pay for them," I said. She left slower than she'd arrived. No slam, no parting barb. Just the dawning realization that credit, access, and comfort had flowed until now like water, and now the faucet was shut. Later, while I sorted the junk drawer of menus and expired coupons, her cousin Ryan called. He's one of the few relatives I respect, level-headed, the kind who doesn't jump into family theater. "Hey man," he said awkwardly. "I don't want to be in the middle, but what's going on?" She called me crying, said you froze accounts, repoed her car, and now she can't get groceries. She said you're sabotaging her. I inhaled, leaned on the counter, looked at the ceiling. Did she tell you what she said at Uncle Dean's birthday? I asked. Silence then. Yeah, I was there. That was out of line. He didn't argue when I said, she isn't being sabotaged. She's being reminded. He hung up with a quiet damn. Over the next days I felt the shift. Whispers, side glances, family group texts that she couldn't control. Her aunt stopped commenting as often. Her cousin deleted a flame emoji under a brunch photo. Her sister stopped tagging her in the chat. She tried to frame me as unhinged, but someone forwarded a screenshot of her, when your man knows his role story, and family saw it in a new light. Suddenly, the sympathy she expected wasn't materializing. Her mother called me in a syrupy voice to complain, claiming I was ruining her. I asked, what did she think I was for? There was a pause, then a softer, guilty, she was joking. Jokes have consequences when you've built your whole life around them. She tried to pose through it, new outfit selfies, vague captions about leveling up, but the comments were different. Not flame wars, just one quiet, loaded line from Cousin Nikki. You sure you're the one doing the cutting? She deleted it and locked her profile. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a chapter in a story she hadn't intended to write. The receipts, the posts, the late-night calls, they formed a pattern that didn't need words. Without money, access, or the illusion of control, the charm faded. She was exposed, and people were remembering what they used to overlook. That night she set the table not as she once had. No music booming, no perfume trailing in the air. Just 2 plates slightly askew, a single candle trembling in the middle, overcooked salmon, cold asparagus, and rice scraped into a tidy pile. She sat across from me and picked at her food without actually eating, eyes avoiding mine. I chewed slowly, let the silence stretch, because this quiet wasn't asking for reconciliation. It was proving there was none to be had. After 10 minutes she finally whispered, "Are you leaving?" I set down my fork, wiped my mouth with a napkin and said, "Not yet." She looked surprised. "Then why?" she asked. I met her eyes without flinching and answered, "Because I finally heard you." It was a small fracture, but it broke something in her. Not theatrically, just a micro-collapse behind her gaze. She looked older in that instant, stripped of the props she'd relied on. "Is this forever?" she asked, voice small. I didn't know. I couldn't pretend it was about vengeance. It was the moment a man realized he'd been edited out of his own life and chose to write a different ending. After dinner she cleared the dishes quietly, passed me in the hall, paused as if to speak, then turned away and went to bed alone. The next morning I opened the drawer that had always been her domain: receipts, expired coupons, takeout menus, hair ties, and moved aside the clutter like peeling away years of noise. I laid out a simple packet, the printed loan agreement with my name under borrower highlighted, a screenshot of the Lexus account stamped default in red with dates, and a blue sticky note in my handwriting. "You said my job was to pay, so I quit." No manifesto, no flourish, just the plain truth she'd choked on for years, folded and left where she'd be sure to see it. I left the drawer a crack open and stepped outside for air, some distance from the performance she'd perfected. Hours later I came back and the drawer was closed and the envelope gone. She didn't speak of it, not that night or the next. Instead she moved quieter, her phone hardly buzzed, no longer filled with voice memos and kitchen laughter. She'd gone still. It wasn't about the car now or the money. It was everything that had led to this and what would follow. Every time she'd called me boring in public, rolled her eyes when I asked for attention, or treated my effort like an invoice, those moments accumulated into a debt she hadn't noticed. She hadn't just lost a vehicle, she'd lost control, not in a dramatic slam of a door but in a quieter, colder unraveling. The faucet runs but the water's off, the card declines at checkout, the invitations stop coming. I didn't gloat or jab a knife in. I simply existed on my own terms. A few nights later she sat at the kitchen island with cold tea, looked up at me like she might apologize, or maybe not. She only looked small and tired. I realized then that the debt wasn't financial alone, it was emotional, and I had been paying it solo for years. The collection had ended, and with it came the repossession of more than just a car.